My name is Noura Jabber. I am Compass's administrative associate, and that means that I do a lot of the behind the scenes and administrative operations work when we have trainings. And I met Juan when he served as an expert on a panel that we curated for a workshop specifically on risk communication back in May. And I love what you had to say during the workshop, and I thank you for joining us here today. Juan Perez Saez has dedicated his personal and professional life to conservation, advocacy, environmental education, and stewardship. And I just want to, I can't wait to hear more about the work that you've done. So thank you for joining us today.
But thank you for having me.
So, what path led you to the work that you do today?
For me, there's no way that I can talk about the path to my career without going back to where I grew up. I'm originally from Panama, and I was born and raised in a very like semi-rural, semi-urban part of the country. I like to compare it to the Midwest. So there's a lot of farming, there's a lot of agriculture. So my grandparents had a butcher, and they also had some land, so they would work out of it, and we'd have, we grow up our own food. We did have like chicken at my home, and my uncle had some horses. So from a very early age, I really have a connection with the environment and our surroundings, and I think I assume that every child in the world understood that connection. Later on in life, I got introduced to an environmental group when I was in middle and high school. And this environmental group took us to the Panama Canal Zone. So the Panama Canal Zone back in the day before the year 2000 was a US territory. So it was a country within a country. So we drove in and we entered the Panama Canal Zone, which, like I said, it was US territory, and everything was greener, everything was cleaner, and I just started wondering, like, wow, this is so different than where I live. And what out of all the things, one thing that caught my eye was I wouldn't see power lines. I was like, where's the power lines? How do they have that? Obviously, they were all underground because obviously it was properly planned. There was urban planning. There was all these criterias, and I think probably put in like the numbers, like the growing in a more rural place, going to the city, entering the US territory, and then going camping for the first time when I was 12 years old really opened my eyes to see a different way to manage nature and steward nature, right? Um, and that kind of led me to go to school for environmental engineering. Um, and I've spent probably the last 20 plus years of my life doing some sort of work, either working in international development with the Peace Corps, also working for the government of Panama, the Ministry of Environment, and most recently in my time living in Colorado, working doing advocacy and policy, both at the state and local level, working with federal agencies, and most recently leading a nonprofit as their executive director.
Thank you for that. It's really wonderful to hear about how your relationship to the environment developed over the course of your life because of where your life took you.
Hmm.
I'd love to know how you would describe your relationship to the communities you interact with professionally.
I believe that my personal life, my own identities, and the communities that I have worked with alongside are very much intertwined. Like there's no way to separate them, right? The issues that I care for and the things that impact me personally are most likely the issues that affect and impact the communities and the people that I work with. One example is in Colorado, I'm part of the Next 100 coalition. This coalition is seeking to create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive public lands or national park system for the next 100 years. And one of the things that we have worked in the last 2 3 years is a mentorship program, right? And one of the reasons why we created this mentorship program is because we realized that there were a number of young people of color in the environmental movement, in the public lands conservation movement, who are great. They're great professionals, but they hit, like the manager level, the specialist level, the coordinator level, and there's no pathway to get you to a more senior role. Like how can you be leading the organizations? How can you be the one making decisions, and having access to resources and wealth is something that our communities have been struggling with. And so we created this mentorship program that is the first one of its kind. And so again, this is a good intersection of like, me as a professional who's a person of color, who's also a first generation American in this country, also a queer person, like I have witnessed firsthand the challenges and the barriers that limit how young professionals can really make it to roles that can have a greater impact. When it comes to environmental stewardship, I live in Colorado. When people think of Colorado, people think of mountains, people think of uh, rivers and skiing and forests and greenery. Well, the truth is, a big part of the state is the plains. Also, a big part of the state is the Denver metro area. We actually had one of the most polluted zip codes in the nation. And that is the issue, right? When I say Denver, you don't think one of the most polluted circuits in the nation. When I say Denver, you don't think of like ozone alert, where the air quality is so bad that people with asthma cannot be outside. Kids cannot be playing. When I said Denver, you don't think about like, oh, it's so hot that we're having a serious drought happening in the state, and it's historic and has happened for years. And the bottom line of that is like communities of color, working class, people with that have been pushed to certain part of the city are dealing with the brunt of these environmental issues. And so a lot of those people do look like me and sound like me. And so for me, it's like my professional journey and the communities that I work with, it's part of my own journey.
Mm. That's a beautiful way to like have professional integrity. Wow. So, why did you decide to participate in Compass's risk communication training when we invited you in May? And is there anything you'd like to share from the experience?
The quickest answer would be that I did have the time. I mean, anything that involved working with professionals and experts who are communicating uh, issues regarding environmental justice or access to clean air, clean water, healthy places is something. If I can do a little bit of it, I love to. Um, I would say one big piece is I went to school to study my master's in environmental and natural resources, and I specialized in environmental social science. When I decided to go into studying natural resources, I truly thought that I was just going to work with plants and animals and take samples of water and look at soil formation and geology and air quality, and I would have to talk to people, and it was great. But the truth is, after you do work in this space, you do know that in order to create change, we need people, we need community, we need to work alongside those, and obviously communities, those communities who are in the front lines are the communities that probably have the best ideas of how to deal with their own issues that they're facing. And so when I got the chance to come and talk to experts whose world is literally something that I have seen and witnessed, and I have had the experience of communicating policy and communicating advocacy strategies or bills and how those bills impact regular people. I do know there's a significant gap. For me, it was a way to bridge that gap, to bring those two worlds together, and seeing the willingness and the eagerness from those experts to learn to do better
Mm.
because they understand the impact that the way how they communicate to people will have in those individuals' life. I think is it's just so critical for any agency that works in risk communication. It's like how we talk about these issues really change perceptions and build trust over time.
Mm. Yeah. I think a lot of that passion also came through when you were on the expert panel and like sharing your experience there too. Um, what advice do you have for scientists who are working with impacted communities and want to improve the world, and want to like communicate with their findings in ways that are accessible to the people that it matters to?
One piece of advice is you're gonna mess up. You're gonna make mistakes. You might use the wrong word. And the key piece of it is like no one is perfect. Um, but also it's like learn from those moments and also try to avoid making those mistakes, right? And the way how you avoid it is practicing. Understand and learn as much as you can from the communities that you're working with. Maybe put yourself a little bit in the shoes of the communities and how would you feel if you were the one receiving the information. And also understanding that, you know, maybe you're not always the best messenger for the message. And so identifying who are those individuals and people and who can be the best messenger for the message. And it is a complex way to do it, but there are very good techniques of how to be a better and more effective communicator when it comes to risk and how to do it with dignity towards those individuals who are the ones being more impacted.
Yeah, because that really matters. Do you face communication barriers in your own work, and how do you navigate them when you do?
Navigating spaces with have not been um, welcoming, nor maybe have been in spaces for people who look like me or people who have my background, comes also with the challenge of all the boxes that people try to put me in. And I think one of my personal challenge is breaking out of that box and challenging the idea that people think I should look like and be like, while also keeping true to who I am. And I don't think that's a struggle that is just mine, but I do think that is something that I have witnessed and experienced is like the way how people put you in boxes, it limit you and also limits themselves
Mm,
because maybe they don't see that they can be something else outside of that box. And that comes to solution when it comes to communicating risk. Assuming that a community member doesn't know and is not an expert in their own issues, that's not true. Or assuming that, oh, I work in air quality and I cannot communicate to these people what is happening with air quality in the neighborhood because they didn't go to college. That's not true. There's probably a chance they know exactly the days that they shouldn't go out. They have experienced the environment every second of their life, and you haven't. So maybe they are a great resource for science, and they're a great resource for solutions and to co-create approaches for dealing with those challenges.
mm. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I'm wondering what else keeps you like motivated and in perspective as you're doing this work, especially when it gets hard.
I think when things get hard, having a support network of people who have your back is probably the number one. And that might be the easiest answer because I think as an adult, it has been, as someone who also has trouble and live in different cities, it is hard. I live in Seattle, I live in Columbus, Ohio, in Panama City, now in Denver, Colorado. Like you get to build a support system and a network, and then you move, and then you have to build again. So that part is hard. I would say that part is really hard, like to try to like rebuild the support system. And I would say that nowadays there is an incredible community that I have been able to be part of, and so lucky to have that support each other. And that is the biggest thing.
Um, on a lighter note, I would love to know also what you do to celebrate your wins when you are successful.
That has been the biggest thing that I have worked on, I would say probably. I personally lately I have done a lot of like trying to spend more time with friends. I mean, 2 weeks ago I was camping BLM land in the middle of nowhere in Southwest Colorado. It was the best. Just hiking, camping. You know, I do enjoy going to like the bowl scene and the Kiki bowl scene in Denver, which is something that even when I tell people, some people in my professional sector don't even know what I mean by it. They think it's actually a proper bowl dance, like
Oh no.
ballroom. And I was like, no, that's not what it is. And if anybody read or see these, what we're talking, maybe you go and Google it. But I do think being surrounded by queer POC folks and joy is so recharging.
Mm,
Um, and resting. Sometimes just maybe um, having a drink, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, whatever the drink of choice, around a fire. Maybe that's it. I think times alone are important as much as time in community and in uh, in your support system. So I think trying to make time for both.
Mm. I really appreciate like how you're able to make celebrating part of your everyday so that you can like really like as somebody who struggles with like celebrating the small wins also, I love how your examples were like small things you can do for yourself just to make yourself feel good. That's awesome. Where can people learn more about your work if they're interested?
So I co-own my own business with my partner. It's called Intersecting Solutions. It's a people-centric solution for inclusive work culture. So I'll see a lot of people put out statements about DEI and how inclusive the places are. So if you already did all of the out-facing work and now you're like, you know what, I want to create really inclusive culture and I want to create systems and do the work that maybe don't give you an award, but keeps the talented people in your team. That's something that we can help with. We also help with coaching, management. I'm also on social media, Juan Outside, at Juan Outside on Instagram. Mostly going to see pictures of me hiking, camping, fishing, doing things outside, just like the name Juan Outside. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Juan Perez Saez. And yeah, it's a little bit of the work that I'm doing right now. And I really appreciate you taking the time to connect and have a conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us and tell us a little more about what you do and your perspective on the work. It is very appreciated.
Thank you, Nor.